Welcome, everybody, to another Double Toasted interview. It's been a while since I've been able to interview anyone. Uh, Corona probably has a lot to do with that, but sometimes it's worth the wait. We have a very special guest here today, and I heard you guys talking about her earlier when we even just the mere mention of her name, and people like, "Oh my God, you talking to her? She's too good for you. What did you do to get her on the show?" So, people, I don't know what I did. I got to thank our production assistant for getting this together too, but I'm very honored to have over here LINDSAY Ellis. LINDSAY, thank you for being here.
Thank you. With your audience flatters. I think I am just the right amount of good
No,
for
no, you're not an amount of good. You're an amount of great for them.
Aw,
Greatness.
thank you.
They could care less about me or what I have to say. They're here to see you and talk to you. And later we might even get some questions from you guys in the chat to ask LINDSAY right here if we have enough time. But LINDSAY, I will introduce her and what she does properly in a little bit. I also want to let everybody know that Horchata is here. Christian Torres, how you doing, man?
I'm well. This is a big moment for me, as I already gushed earlier, and so I'm going to put my professional cap on now, and I'm just really excited to be here. Thank you for including me, Coleman.
Yeah, no. Thank you for being here. LINDSAY. I'm going to say that he is a huge fan of yours, and he probably knows way more about you than I do. So I thought it'd be a good idea to have him on. But to let people know about you, just very quickly, because we're going to be talking about these things in a little while. But LINDSAY has just released a book, and she's also huge YouTube star. Has articles written about her film essays, her movie knowledge. She's also, if you can look at the room behind her, you could probably guess that she's a huge geek.
See my wall of star screams.
Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about her. I confused it with love. She said that might be a strong word, but
No. I am I think Transformers fan is correct. I think people, but that doesn't mean you can't be critical of the thing that you are in the fandom of. Because I think that for the most part, the Michael Bay movies are, inexcusable, but fascinating. So that's my approach to the Transformers fandom.
We'll talk about certain things you have fandom for. Transformers, certain categories of movies, musicals being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to talk about some of your accomplishments right here. I was telling everybody, even before we started today, for anybody who knows LINDSAY, then I don't need to tell you this, but as a proper host, I will put it out there for the few that don't. Her YouTube page, approaching 1 million pretty soon. You haven't even had this up that long. I'm looking at it right now. You have 984,000 subscribers right there.
we're having a 984,000 subs stream in a couple hours. But yeah, I think like the joke I like to say is like we're like roughly the 20,000th most subscribed channel on YouTube. So, moving on up.
Very nice. So that's what I want to talk about with your success for your YouTube channel. It's for anyone who has gone to your channel and knows your channel. I'm sure that they've seen your Hobbit duology videos. I think it was a series of videos, about 3 of them. I got a clip of it right here that I'll show people. It's your breakdown of the Hobbit films, and in the middle of them, they kind of take a turn. You start talking about the Hobbit, but then it turns into an industry thing too. Let's take just a real quick look at a clip of that for those who haven't seen it.
The Hobbit trilogy was released between 2012 and 2014 under the subtitles An Unexpected Journey. A huge chunk of the cast returned to reprise their roles from Lord of the Rings.
Now, it looks like it starts out as a typical video essay, but then turns into a whole thing about, correct me if I'm wrong, about how the Hobbit films and maybe in Lord of the Rings kind of ravaged New Zealand in a way.
Yeah, in a way. It's still very controversial because obviously it's like James Cameron is really taking advantage of that Hobbit Law, and it's called the Hobbit Law. Watch the duology, and the joke is that at the end of the second video, like, oops, it's 3 now, which is what happened whenever they were actually released Hobbit. There basically it was a law that limited power in New Zealand, which made labor much cheaper there. Was very controversial and has only become more controversial. But American film companies have very much taken advantage of it, for better or worse.
Yeah, because of how detailed you got with this. I believe you got a Hugo Award.
No, we were nominated. We
Nominated.
were like the second. Yeah, I can't even say I'm the first YouTuber nominated. I'm actually the second YouTuber who's been nominated for a Hugo. The first was Rachel Bloom, who went on to create Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, the CW show.
Yeah.
But I guess I could say I'm the first video essayist to be nominated for a Hugo. But we lost to AO3, the Organization for Transformative Works, the fan fiction website.
But even being a YouTuber and being nominated for a Hugo Award, being the second YouTuber nominated, that's a big accolade within itself.
Yeah, we're pioneer. I guess like YouTuber as a label definitely has a stigma, and it's not unearned. I think a lot of people who have success on YouTube tend to be the type of person that will do anything for attention. Like the Paul brothers are kind of like the example of that. So it's an interesting place to be, where we're, I guess, obviously catering towards an older audience by YouTube standards, like people in their 20s and 30s, and I guess challenging notions of the type of person that makes content on YouTube.
It's funny because I could even probably read my notes. You took certain words right out my mouth for something that I want to ask you about later. I almost want to shut up, Lindsay. I'm going to mention that later. But no, you actually said something that's very interesting that I'm going to apply to a question later. But what I want to, with again, the praise that you've been giving, even being nominated for a Hugo Award is almost an award itself. And the success of your channel, what is it that you think, because essays are not uncommon on YouTube, what is it about your particular essays that you think makes them so successful and stand out and make people want to award you for them? What is it, your personality? Is it a combination of how detailed you get with it? What is it that makes stands out from the rest?
In that case, it was advocacy. It's who wants to advocate for you. And basically it all kind of started when, because like obviously like the people who are the Hugos are like science fiction and fantasy fans. And there was someone who was very prominent in the community who watched the videos and immediately was like, this would be considered eligible for best related work, which is the category that we were nominated in. And so she got a bunch of other people who were very active in the Worldcon community and were just like, hey, nominate this. I really believe in this. So I think it's part of it is like, do people like your work? But part of it is also like, who believes in your work enough to actually advocate for you, which I think is kind of usual in influencer culture, which yes, that is what I will call it, because that's what it is. Because people tend to think of like, YouTube videos almost as like commercials these days.
Yeah.
Like almost like infomercials, because that's slowly what they're becoming. And again, it's not earned, and that's part of why I've stopped doing sponsored content on my channel. I do sponsored content on my podcast, but it's only for one thing, and that's Nebula, which is an alternative. Ironically, it's the alternative to YouTube. But yeah, I think in that case, it's like, if you make great content that people like, that's fine. But I think it doesn't occur to people that advocate for it to rise above its station, in the words of Hamilton, to be worthy of attention outside, the streamies and the webbies, both of which are extremely, extremely corporate.
You know what? I'm going to pass this off to Christian to ask a question. I'm going to get into your book in a little while, but I definitely find it interesting, and you being a very popular YouTuber, your take on YouTube, the platform itself, saying that you see this becoming, you might even say that's the way it is now, that it's becoming a huge infomercial. Everything is just a big infomercial. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more? And with that thought, Where do you see the platform going in a few years if that's the case?
I really wish it wasn't a monopoly. Um, but I think there's this sort of weird sort of cognitive dissonance going on right now. You know, the corporate world versus, making interesting art. Because I think like you look at TikTok where they don't really make any money. I think that they use the form that originates on TikTok. It's almost kind of like a form of film language more interestingly than what you're seeing on YouTube right now, which is trending more and more towards television and a much more conventional mode of like editing and framing. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I know that YouTube is they're pushing different things. Like on the one hand, they reward engagement, they reward watch time, and they reward like high emotionality, which is why like some scary reactionary channels do really well on YouTube because they get really high engagement and they have really really long videos. But I guess the flip side of that is YouTube is pushing for legitimacy, and what they see as legitimacy is like celebrities like Will Smith, who is a YouTuber now, weird,
Yeah.
and things that look like television. And so I think that is a little bit about at odds with what we used to see, which was, the almost kind of of a different form of film language. Editing on YouTube used to be very different from what you would see in a TV show or in film, and now kind of trending more and more the same. And I think that is a result of, having more and more branded sponsorships. Like they will only tolerate so much
Yeah.
experimentation.
Yeah. Do you think that, and again, this is something I think is interesting to ask, being that you are such a big, as you say, influencer and officially a YouTuber.
I think, yeah, I'm not that big. I'm what they would consider mid-level.
Okay.
Like, because since I'm like, less than 1 million subs still, that's sort of like mid, like B and C list. I think once we pass 1 million subs, which, hopefully we will in a month or so, then it's just like, it's to be like, yeah, we did it.
Well,
Made the big leagues, boys.
okay, well then you will at some point. Let's just say it's safe to pass that. You have a lot of stake in YouTube then. So do you see, with what you're saying right now, do you see YouTube being more limiting as time goes by? And even right now, do you feel like you're limited by what you can do on YouTube?
Yes, absolutely. Because you have to play to the algorithm. Like the kind of stuff that you put out, like if I put out something short, it had better be clickbait because or it had better be like for a good reason, because lower engagement means like your next video will be promoted less by YouTube's algorithm. And so the result is that we kind of sometimes shelve things that are more interesting to us in order to focus on something that we know is going to get more clicks. Like, the last video I did about Disney live action remakes, I'm not going to say it was cynical, but like it was sort of like we did it because like, oh, we need to like boost our algorithm rating because the last one didn't do very well. And, and so the result is that you do tend to limit yourself because you are so concerned with staying on that. And like, YouTube Studio, if you look at it, they have more and more overt that that's what they want you to do. Like when you log in, there will be like this big banner that's like, oh, this video's not doing as well as your last few. Maybe you want to, and that does. No matter how much you don't want it to, it absolutely embeds itself into like the type of content because like we did one on Phantom of the Opera earlier this year that we worked really, really hard on. And it was, it's like on the one hand, it was a thing that interested us a lot, but, it's kind of a struggle to like allow our to do that and say like, it's okay to do a topic that isn't going to get a lot of views. So absolutely, because if you want to in YouTube's good graces, you have to play to their algorithm. It's just, and this is a business just as much as like making people are interested in and want to see.
Yeah, that is true. Christian, you want to add to this? You got anything you want to ask?
Yeah, I mean, because I think that that's something that we all kind of struggle with when we're in this business is the idea of it's commerce, but does that mitigate or spur creativity? So I'm always interested in that as well, because it's like sometimes you have to make concessions, but overwhelmingly, do you feel like you get to do exactly what you want to do 90% of the time?
In a way, I, I'm in charge of basically everything that I have anything to do with. I think the only thing where I'm not like the top dog is PBS. But even then, I basically get like the final say on like the writing, even though I have several co-writers. So it's kind of like yes and no. I can't even begin to imagine what the channel would look like if I was just like, wait, whatever, just like pure id. Like we've spent so much time like cultivating a brand, cultivating a voice, like building an editing style that is like unique but familiar. And we have a lot of fun with it. Like I think it's gotten to the point where writing isn't the fun part anymore, editing is, because like so many of the jokes are done in the editing, and like that is like incredibly gratuitous, and people really like that stuff. Like whenever we'll like hone in on something, and like I think one of the more popular ones is a line from The Hunchback of Notre Dame that's from the Jason Alexander gargoyle. It's like this very serious moment in the movie where they're watching Paris burn and they're like, oh, it's hopeless. And then it cuts to Jason Alexander playing poker with a pigeon. And he's like, you're telling me I'm losing to a bird. And it just destroys the pathos of the scene. And we thought it was so funny. So when we did our like hour-long video on Hunchback, I kept splicing that in just because I thought it was funny. And people just like got obsessed with it. So I think people really respond to that sort of like I do think it's authentic because it's like we think it's funny, so we're gonna put it in, but it is also sort of like choosing what that people are gonna respond to, because there's some in jokes that are just not gonna fly. So I think I think 90% of the time you do get to choose it, and since I am sort of the arbiter of what goes at what stays, it is kind of a weird place to be, because I often wish I had like a boss that would be like, here's your 9 to 5, and then you can turn off, and then you can go build a puzzle. I don't really have that.
I don't think anybody who works online, not just YouTube, online in the kind of space that we do, ever has that. That's
you're always on. You're always like, ooh, what can I monetize next?
Yeah, it really is. I don't know how it is for your marriage.
I mean, weirdly, it's like my spouse got laid off in the Great Plaguening, along with every single other engineer contractor at the place where he worked, which I won't name because they might hire him back whenever they get the money for it. But like lately it's been fine because he's like he wants to be supportive, but like in general it is honestly kind of difficult because like he does do the 9 to 5 thing, and he can turn off when he gets home. So it's like even if he had a stressful day, he can just kind of decompress and be like, I'm away from the office. I'm, like I can go to, lie down and go to sleep. And meanwhile, I'm just always kind of on. And I think that's hard to empathize with when you don't live it.
My wife's just I think I'm ready to go in any day, and she's gonna have an intervention for me because she has said like, you seriously are, it's not even funny anymore. You're a workaholic. You have a problem. So.
Yeah.
I'm glad to know I'm not the only one.
Yeah. It's kind of like that thing with YouTube's, like when you log into YouTube Studio and they're like, you're getting fewer views this month. Like it's not just like the platforms that we use like Twitch and YouTube, they drive that. Like they push you to be like that, and I think it's healthy, and I wish it wasn't like that.
Yeah, no, I do too. I wish I could take a break, but that that brings up speaking of how busy you are and how you say you're always on, let's switch to your book over here. Axiom's End, which I think just got released 2 days ago.
Yes, it was the official release date was on Tuesday, although like every bookstore was just like, whatever, we got it in. And because apparently like if there's no hard like embargo, like bookstores will just put it on the shelf as soon as they get it.
Yeah. So we're talking about always being on. You always are thinking about going in and curating these channels. You have to maintain these channels. And then you go off and you do things like you have other things besides your own channel, all the other things that you're maintaining. I'm looking at the PBS show that you also the PBS digital show that you have is lit. This is the channel right here. You can see a lot of videos that they have up there, but between keeping your channel up, editing your channel, going in and writing for your stuff, and then you also host this someone else's show, and then you have a book out. I'm like, God damn, how did you write a book? Writing, you do a lot of things that people can't even be successful in one area. And somehow you manage to stay busy and you're successful in all these areas. How do you find time to juggle all that and then write a book?
It's funny that you say that because I feel like I always feel like I'm never optimizing my time and I could have done so much more and I should be doing so much more. And I think that is... I wonder if previous generations allowed themselves to take a break because they didn't have these like frickin', YouTube studio being like, you're slipping in the views, hun. maybe you want to do a little more. But in the case of It's Lit, I have a co-host. So she does roughly half the episode. Sometimes we'll share, sometimes we cameo, and it used to be a lot more fun back when we used to be able to film in the studio in Austin where you guys are. So I hope that one day we get to do that again. But like for that I have co-writers. We have a consultant that does all the research for us. So that one is much more of a collaborative effort. So in that way, and also we don't do any of the post-production, which is very important because that stuff takes forever. That's a much more collaborative effort. So that in its way is easier. So whenever one of us feels really passionate about a subject, they can just head it up, and that will be roughly like the one It's Lit episode you do every 2 or 3 months. But the book is like, it's just like, I think people can see, like, if you see there are gaps in my output, that's probably because I was working on a book. The real draft of Axiom's End that was eventually the one that went on submission. I did the bulk of the work right after those Hobbit videos went out.
Yeah.
So that was like, the biggest project we have ever done, like to this day. And I hope I hope one day we get to travel. Cause like, I know people like Brazilians in my Twitter mentions are always like, come to Brazil, because that's like the Brazilian stereotype. But the truth is we were going to go to Brazil this year to do like a similar big project. Plague. But like, it was right after I finished the Hobbit series was where I did the bulk of the work. Because part of it is just like whenever you finish a project, you still kind of, those wheels are going, you know what I mean? Like the energy is still there, but the project is done. So I kind of would push it into another project. So when you see gaps in my channel, that's probably why. Because the second book is on draft 2. So, and that one, my final deadline is in February. So expect some gaps.
Okay.
I think August will probably be a gap month. But yeah, I think it's just about like knowing your limits. Like I actually just turned down a pretty big opportunity because I had already committed both like to the PBS show, and I have to keep my own channel going, and I have to finish the second draft of the second book, which is much longer and much more ambitious than the first book. So that one has to like hit right. It deals with much more sensitive subjects.
Well, that's I want to ask you 2 questions about your book. One, knowing that you are so much of a movie lover, I look at the cover of your book, and I look at the design, the graphic design there, and people have probably already asked you this, and stop me if they have.
Actually, no. I haven't had any questions about the design, but
Did
I think I know where you're going.
Where am I going with this?
Alfred Hitchcock.
Yes, Saul Bass.
Saul Bass, yep.
Who did some Alfred Hitchcock designs. Also did The Shining and everything. Yeah, so was that? Since you mentioned that and you knew what I was going to say.
Oh yeah,
and
we had a Saul Bass mood board on Pinterest because I was very lucky because normally happens for debut authors is they give you the cover and they're like, here, this is it, and maybe they'll tweak it a tiny bit, but the first round of covers they sent, were nothing like this, and I was absolutely not. They did an entire second round, and somehow it was even further from what we wanted. And so me and co-writer Angelina, who does all of, she's my co-editor, and she basically does half of everything on my main channel and also co-writes It's Lit. We sat down, and she was the one who suggested Saul Bass. She was the one that I think Saul Bass is the aesthetic we want to go for. And so we created this mood board and sent it to them, and it was this whole process. I hired an outside graphic designer, but eventually it was all done in-house with very, very heavy input from us. But yeah, that was very deliberate, and we fought hard for that cover too. The final version was the 26th draft.
Nice.
Which is insane.
Yeah, I'm glad that you recognized what I was going to ask you, because that's one of the first.
I'm glad you caught it, because you're actually the first person to catch the style by name.
Well, you know what? I'm glad, because I said, you know what, this is going to be a stupid question to ask her.
No, that was a whole thing. We pushed hard for this aesthetic, but that started I guess it kind of goes to show sometimes your instincts are correct, and pushing for the thing that aligns with your vision is the thing you should do, even if it may not seem like the obvious thing to the people you are pitching it to.
It's a great cover. It's a great cover, and and it's definitely eye-catching enough to want to know what the put it back up there so people can see. It's a great cover, and it's eye-catching enough to make people want to know what this is about. I could tell people it's about, but I have you here, and I think you'd probably be the best one to sell your book. Can you tell people what this is about? I can do it too. Christian, you want to try? Christian,
why didn't Christian do it?
Christian, you try.
You want me to do it? Oh
yeah.
God, but I'm only 4 chapters in. What I like about it is that it's a kind of what's the divergent point of our history? It takes place in kind of an alternate history, 2007, where there's been a first contact by I guess aliens. But yeah, it seems to be kind of in the same vein as I think you once said that you were very influenced by Orson Scott Card for all the good reasons, none of the bad reasons.
Only the
and I just
good
wanted to know if
reasons.
that kind of still held true when you were writing this. Did you take any specific influences from anybody?
Oh, tons. I think if you were to name a especially film, I think people have correctly observed that it feels very cinematic, and it definitely is. It's if you name an alien narrative from the 90s or 2000s as an influence, you're probably correct. I think I have direct references to every single one of those in there somewhere, except for Invader Zim, which is my mistake and I wish I had done. But yeah, it's it's I guess the thing is it starts as a conspiracy narrative. I think the actual plot and where it ends up going tends to, I wouldn't say surprise people, but it may not seem obvious from the outset, but hopefully ends up being a satisfying read. I think it's much more character driven than people expect it to be. and I guess more feelingsy, because I think I try to bury the lead because I want I want an adult audience, and I want people to like maybe kind of realize that they're into something that they don't realize that they're into.
Right.
And I guess in the weeks to come, we shall see how successful that is.
I want to come in and first of all say congratulations on the reception of the novel.
Thank you.
People who are looking for the novel, if you're out there finding it or trying to find it on the internet, like I told Lindsay, I told you my wife, I mentioned this to her, and I mentioned the premise of the novel, just the premise of it, and she was like, I like that. I'm going to look this up. And she came back and she told me she ordered the book. She can't wait to read it. She's into it. I mean, I'm not saying this to be nice. Like I almost got a little jealous, because she was gushing over you.
I hope she likes it. I guess like it's funny because like before it came out, I was like freaking out, and I was kind of doing this like only child like gifted program thing where I'm like, oh god, if it's not perfect, everyone's gonna hate me. But like now that it's out, and seeing that like even if everybody doesn't like it, there are some people that it means a lot to, and like that actually it made them happy and made them a little bit distracted from the plague year. It's a lot easier to deal with now, and it's nice to know that even if it's not everybody's bag, there's a lot of people out there that are appreciating it, and like that is good enough for me.
Well, I tell you, it's been getting a good reception here. There's been some great reviews out there. That's one of the things that pushed my wife to want to get it. She found an article telling about the book. Also praising the book. So congratulations on that. I have to now. This is where I want to ask you, because you said something earlier, and I said, "God damn it, Lindsay, you took the words right out my mouth." I was going to use those words. You actually used the exact same almost phrases that I used, because I was going to ask in regards to your book. I was going to ask you, being a YouTuber. There is a certain stigma that comes with being a YouTuber. You use the specific examples like the Paul brothers, but I usually say this: the stigma that comes with it is obnoxious youth, people pranking, being loud, and if you're successful, you probably have too much money, too early, too fast, and just a lot of immaturity that goes with it. You are the exact opposite of that. Of course, you've written a book, you're married, you're productive. You seem like a good person, so you don't fuck with people.
I try. So, I mistakes were made, but
But I'm sure we all have made them. But you having again this stigma of a YouTuber, did that have any impact on publishers wanting to take your book on?
I do wonder, because I don't know. Because there were two editors. Because the way going on submission works is if you're going through traditional publishing, so you get a literary agent, they sign you, and then they may or may not do a round of revisions. We did one round of revisions, and then we went on submission. And two of the editors I talked to, which usually a round of submission will be between like 10 and 15 publishing houses. Sometimes it'll be like to put out feelers, like see what the demand is. And sometimes it will, depending on how big the agent expects the demand to be, you'll go, you'll put your A game first. And I think that's what he did. Because we put it on submission on Monday. And the first call we got was that Friday. And the editor that we talked to was like so excited. And the way he talked about it was like, yeah, I'm not going to have any problems getting the publisher on board. We're going to talk to you on Monday, and we're going to make an offer. And then Monday rolled around and the publisher was not on board. And this happened twice, where the editor was like, just seemed so like, yeah, I got this, I just got to get my guys on board, and got to get our ducks in a row, and then we'll make an offer. And then they dropped out. And I obviously I will never know why. Like, it might have been we already have a book like this on our list, or maybe like the publisher didn't agree that like it was very good. But it could also just be like, influencers have a bad track record, and like the stigma is there. You know, maybe they looked me up and they saw something they didn't like. You know, you never know exactly why people you know, accept you or reject you, because the guy that eventually did buy it, like the first thing he talked about was the PBS show, and how like cool he thought that was. But one of the jokes like that we have, like a lot of my colleagues who are YouTubers, is like, well, what do you say when people ask what you do for a living? And like I usually do, like, if complete strangers, I usually default to either I'm a writer or I work for PBS. And
Yeah.
when we were publishing the book and they did like the first, like the copy, and they were like, from YouTuber, brr, 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 and I like had to send like this blast to everyone at the publisher. I was like, do not use the word YouTuber. Do not strike it from your vocabulary. Like, it is a bad word and it is going to work against you. And
Yeah.
and I think because a lot of it is like, you know, there's this stereotype of the YouTuber book, and I think that is most YouTubers. They just knock out a book for easy cash because it's like a product, and you know, you can get it signed, and you know, they don't really care. I think it's honestly pretty rare, you know, for effort to go into one of these things.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry, I thought I heard a
Was there
whiny
a
dog.
killer in the house?
No, I thought I heard a whiny dog, but I think yeah. It's like, it's not time for walkies yet. But yeah, no, the stigma is real, and it's definitely something we've had to be careful about, because it's like where you want to appeal to my audience who knows who I am, but if you don't know who I am, you have to be extremely coy about it and be like, I work for PBS and I have a Hugo nomination for, you know, things.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Christian, you got anything you want to add here? Ask?
Yeah, I do. I'm really interested in the idea. I think you certainly have to be creative to do academic writing, but I don't think it's the same thing as creative writing. And you've shown how really like adept you are at doing the academic writing. Was there a big schism when trying to write creatively for the novel itself, or did you kind of lean on your academic research ability? The one example I have, and I did not fact check this, so if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, which is that I think it's the second chapter right before we meet Cora. There's a very, very short chapter where you're just talking about the fluctuations in the stock market on a specific day. And for some reason, I was like, oh, was that like a jumping off part? Did she just go and research something and used a truth to kind of tell a fiction? I just wanted to know if you can kind of talk about the distinction between academic writing and creative writing.
It's honestly really hard, because part of it is you have to know your shit, but you also have to accept that you can never be completely knowledgeable about something that is completely outside of your purview. Like, I think one of the things that I'm, I guess, most niggly about, like self-conscious about, is like the CIA, because that's really hard to research. And also there are a lot of locations in the book that you literally cannot go to. Like there's a fair chunk takes place at the Cheyenne Mountain Complex, which is where NORAD is based. You can't get in there. They used to give tours, but after 9/11, no mas. But on the other hand, sometimes you choose to just omit reality because it's fiction, you know, like you're allowed to change things or like not be completely realistic because, you know, the plot needs it. And also it's aliens, guys. It's like in the case of that, like the stock market thing, I think what I did was I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure what I did was I started with what the actual stock market was on the day that the book begins, and then almost kind of use that as the divergent point for like the alternate history.
Right.
And that's why the stock market kind of changes in a way that is more reflective of what happened a year later, because that's sort of I guess one of the set dressing-y like background noise aspects of the book is, you know, sort of we in the real world know that this stock market crash was inevitable, but because of the sort of like upheaval that happens in the book, it happens about a year earlier than it would have happened. So like we knew it was inevitable, but the people in this universe don't know it was inevitable. They can be like, aha, well, the government did it or the aliens did it, and kind of incorrectly assign blame to something that we know was really going to happen. And so that was it's sort of like a back and forth. I honestly think it is different because, like, on the one hand, you do have to do a lot of research, especially for setting. But on the other hand, you're allowed to be wrong in fiction. You're not allowed to be wrong in like academic writing. And so that does take a lot more effort to like make sure like your facts are straight and like any kind of, alternative viewpoint is vetted and possibly included, because people will get mad if you don't. And so, it is really different because you can choose to ignore reality with creative writing.
Yeah.
It's kind of part of the benefit.
Yeah. I'm going to move it on to something a little lighthearted here, maybe. I want to get around to the geek side of the girl over here with all those Transformers behind you, because everybody's looking at your bookshelf right now, and they're getting shelf envy of what you have behind you. So, a lot of people noticed they were Transformers back there, and you're from what I understand, I mean, I don't know if it's the Michael Bay movies or the property itself, but you're a big Transformers fan.
Oh, there they go. See?
Yeah, you got you wearing styling with your shades and your Transformers shirt on right there. Even right down.
No, this is Dark Universe. This is you remember Dark Universe? The Universal was going to have their own Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I'm not talking about the shirt you have on right now. I see. That's the thing. You can't see the other shirts. I got that. You're actually posing like Star Wars. Like you're a Star Wars model. You're up against the wall and you got on the Star Wars shirt. You got your glasses. You're looking up in the sky.
Oh yeah. I see the wired piece.
Oh no, I know what Dark Universe is. Believe me.
It's like, I know Dark Universe. Do not Dark Universe explain to me.
Yeah, hey, don't you talk down to me.
That is well, I mean, that is the wall of Starscreams. If I could lift up my computer and take you into the other room, we have like a walk-in closet that's my husband has about 800 Transformers from across the generations. Not G1, he's not a fan of G1, but like really, like, these are mine. I have a couple more over here that you also can't see, but this is just Starscream. And then that we have some of my Tolkien stuff, some of my this is the Lord of the Rings shelf.
I have there was a quote here. Instead of reading the quote, I'll actually let the moment speak for itself. But there, you had a quote saying that Transformers, especially in the movies, there was one particular time that had a great influence on your life.
Oh yeah. Change my life.
Bumblebee, stop lubricating the man.
Get that thing to stop!
You're older now.
Yeah.
You're
no, and it's like you said that, I'm like, yep.
Yeah, you're older now. You're actually an academic at this point. You've written a book. You ever look back on those moments, especially these Transformers movies, and like, yeah, that was stupid?
No. Like, I completely stand by that. Like, I think because that was I don't know. I think like again, 2007, that moment in the first Transformers movie was sort of where, I guess, I don't know, the brand was born, because I was like, I already had a degree in cinema studies by that point. I had graduated college. Obviously NYU is one of the like premier institutions for the study of the cinema. And we had definitely done a lot of pop culture stuff at NYU. It's not as pretentious as it sounds, but like I hadn't really thought of how to apply it. And then this, scene in the Transformers movie was just like so fascinating to me that it kind of made me like obsessed with the study of Michael Bay, and like almost like Michael Bay as an auteur. And that's where the idea for the whole plate came, like a few years later. Granted, me and a colleague, his name is Dan Olson, he does Folding Ideas on YouTube, so if you like my stuff, you'll probably like his stuff. But he and I started kind of writing these essays that were like, we're going to talk about the Transformers franchise, but like very, very seriously and very, very like like we're going to give it its due diligence, because that's not a thing you see terribly often, especially for Michael Bay. And it is honestly kind of wild to me that there isn't more academic study of Michael Bay, because he is so influential. But I just, there was just something about Bumblebee Stop Lubricating the Man that just spoke to my soul. And I don't know, that's just my brand ever since. Like they, you know, asked me to, like, that someone did a cartoon of that moment, and that was my Twitter avatar for years, was John Turturro getting peed on by a robot. And I only recently and begrudgingly changed it. I will probably change it back after this whole book tour is done. But like, yeah, it's just, I think that to me, you know, it is sort of what eventually became sort of the brand of the channel. It was just like this juxtaposition of low art that is like base and kind of invites you not to think about it, with like high concept and academia. And so, you know, it's, you know, okay, Michael Bay, because the other thing about Michael Bay is he's very well educated. Like, he went to Wesleyan. One of my professors was his classmates. He knows what he's doing. So I'm like, okay, Michael Bay.
I never had any doubt that he did know what he was doing.
Yeah, he knows. He gets it.
You know, I have one more thing, because Christian, you can add on to this, but I have one more thing I want to ask you. If you want to get back into kind of academics, this is just curious to me, because I have very strong feelings about something that you addressed in one of your videos. By the way, people, they're mentioning we love your whole plate videos. You know,
yeah.
No, I told you have some big fans up in here.
Oh, thank you. The whole plate, yeah. I think the most common response to the book is there is a whole plate reference in the book about halfway through, and like half of my Twitter timeline is just like, see what you did there.
Yeah. No, a lot of people even saying I can't wait for the next plate. So, some Moon Metaphysics. We rock with you, Lindsay. So,
I find it really funny that her divergent point is a few months after the original Transformers movie. It's like 07.
Yeah. Yeah, man, you know.
Yeah, just something about that year. I don't know, just broke my brain. And then I was just like, okay, this is where we live now. This is my brand.
There's a video essay that you did, or video that you did about J.K. Rowling. Of course, J.K. Rowling is in a lot of controversy right now for her comments about transgender and the use of transgender woman. You know, that term, people, you probably heard of it. If you haven't, go look it up. It's all over the place now. But you did on your channel, you did a commentary on this about its death of the author. And you know, basically it's about, I believe, you know, again, if I'm oversimplifying this, please let me know. But I think it's about separating the art from the artist, you know, that whole argument. I'll let just a snippet of this play real quick.
Basically, you can try to be rational about the whole thing and be like, don't support her financially, but the reality is it's a lot more complicated than that. So while on some level there is a sort of broader political discussion on how she wields her influence, really when people want to talk about death of the author, in this instance, they want to reconcile their personal feelings about Harry Potter with the author. Like, how do I reconcile the fact that the author of this series is using her power to do such incredible harm, all while genuinely believing that she is doing the right thing, with the fact that the series was so formative for so many people?
Now keeping in mind that you even use the term yourself, influencer.
How do you reconcile this?
Sorry, I didn't mean to put that back on right there. You use the term yourself, influencer, and you also, now you've also written a book, so you probably you're closer to this issue than a lot of people with, you know, at least understanding what it's like to be a writer and putting something out there that a lot of people react to, either positively or negatively. But, you know, being that you are in that position, you probably have a very interesting answer on what it is like to separate the art from the artist. Christian and I talked about this the other day, and I have some very strong opinions on separating the art from the artist. What are your opinions on that? Whether you're taken from that video or your own feelings, you know, what are you thinking now?
Well, the point I was trying to make with that is I think J.K. Rowling is such an outlier that it's kind of she's a world of its own whenever we're talking about separating art from the artist. That said, and this was something I said early in the video, like I've seen people using death of the author as an excuse to continue to ethically assume her. And my point was that death of the author is an academic theory that is, was conceived only for the study of a body of work. Because before that, it was very common for, we are going to study this text in the context of the author's life, and we're going to incorporate their biography. And so this French dude named Roland Barthes came along and came up with the concept of death of the author, basically trying to say that sort of as a contrast to auteur theory, and saying that the text should exist independently from the author's life and the author's worldview. So effectively, I kept getting a lot of questions on Twitter that were like, how does death of the author apply in this circumstance? And I'm like, it doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. You're trying to use an academic theory to justify your consumption habits. And that's not why death of the author exists. That's not the point. The point is for study. And what you're asking is just a completely different question. You're asking how to continue ethically consuming her work. And my point was there, I don't care what you do with your time. You do whatever. But if it is genuinely your goal not to support her because you disagree with what she said, you can't consume Harry Potter anymore, because she has so carefully and inextricably tied herself to that franchise. She has such insane control over it. So even if you're doing something like writing fan fiction, you're still kind of promoting her brand, and her brand is where her power comes from. So I think personally, I'm it's not immoral to assume it. That wasn't my point at all. And I think honestly, it's kind of an irrelevant question about separating art from the artist, because in this case, it's not really about how you how you interpret a word. It's about, are you signal boosting this person, and where do they get their power from? And my point there was if you really don't want to support her, you can't say the fans own Harry Potter now. No, categorically they do not. I think that's a very naive and selfish way to approach it. We all participate in unethical systems every day. You're not a bad person. And that was because Carl of Swindon raided my channel a couple weeks ago. After that video came out, which is the dumbest, worst faith, and they don't listen, they don't care.
Yeah,
they're just looking.
No, that's the internet. Period. Yeah, I agree with you. I thought that was interesting. I really want to hear it from you, because I agree so much. It's maybe you can separate the artist if that artist is not creating new works. I see people use H.P.
Lovecraft.
Lovecraft.
Kept bringing up Lovecraft.
Yeah,
exactly. Lovecraft, and I'm just Lovecraft is dead. And, it's kind of impossible to enter a discourse about Lovecraft without talking about how racist he was. That's a part of the discourse. And I don't think it's dangerous or unethical to be in the Lovecraft fandom, because if you're in the Lovecraft fandom, you're not a fan of the guy or what he believed. You're a fan of his weird shit. And granted, there are a lot of racist Lovecraft fans, but for the most part, in the mainstream, people are, very good about these discussions and, what it means to consume the work of someone who was so, hardline and weird. Even then, the whole, by the standards of his time argument does not hold up at all. To me, that is absolute nonsense.
But at least he's gone, and, his works are found again. If you consume the work, you're not exactly empowering him anymore. You're not contributing to his bank his bank account or his influence, because he's gone.
Right.
If you have a person that's out there and you know what that person's like, and they're still putting out things and you're still buying that shit, then you are actively supporting that person, knowing good and well what they are. So you're right.
Yeah.
There's a level of selfishness, I think, that goes on with that. I just want to hear, being a writer, where that came from. Christian, you got anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, just from a personal thing, now that you have a novel out, so it's taking away the cancellation part of Death of the Author, which shouldn't apply to begin with. Do you hope for reader response, or do you really believe that, like, especially because it's an ongoing series, is it about what your authorial intent is?
I you know, again, because like a lot of the point I made in the J.K. Rowling video and the point I made in my original Death of the Author video is I think that Death of the Author is an interesting concept in, you know, kind of the way that like Keynesian economics is an interesting concept. Like it's in pure theory, it makes sense. Like supply side economics makes sense in theory, but in practice, there's always these like real world, like, you know, a multitude of real world complications that make the theory flawed. And that's why you can't ever predict like where the stock market's going to go. So I feel like Death of the Author, again, is like interesting in theory, but in practice, it's just not like, you know, biases are going to creep into your reading. And if you know anything about the author, that is going to creep into your reading of the text. Now, that said, as an author, I would like to die. Like, it's, you know, fly free little bird. Like you know, if people ask me questions, I'm happy to answer them, but like I don't want to be like Wizard Poops with J.K. Rowling. I don't want to like do ex post facto like, well, this is what I meant, or like these aliens are gay. They're so gay.
Yeah,
I just didn't
after
mention
the fact,
it.
yeah.
Like
It wasn't in the text,
I
Lindsay.
would like I want people to kind of like have their own interpretations, and I kind of feel like if people are interpreting it in a way that is wildly outside of what I intended, then that's kind of on me. You know, that means I wasn't clear enough. So I'm like very like, kill me. I don't want. I think it's like once it's out, it's in, you know, other people's hands, and I feel like if people don't want to support me because they, you know, disagree with my politics, that's totally fair. You know, I do that all the time. Like,
yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because I do have influence, nothing on the level of J.K. Rowling, but like, I do occasionally use my influence to advocate for things I believe in. And if you're like, you know, if you hate trans people, it's like, bye.
Yeah,
bye,
yeah, I'm with you. Like, I don't support Kanye. I wasn't a big Harry Potter fan to begin with. I love Harry Potter the movies, but I can't support anything. I don't even know if I want to see this new movie, you know, these Fantastic Beasts movies anymore.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh god, they're so bad though. Like, I think that was just like,
so that's not very hard, you know.
Yeah, I know. I'm just like, are you really sad? Because are you really torn over the Fantastic Beasts? Are you really?
Nah. I wanted an excuse not to watch them anyway. So
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I'm
I was
getting
just like,
them.
oh,
You know what, Lindsay? I know it's 6:00. You got some more streaming to do, or you got some stuff to do later. I just want to say that people, it's funny, you know. These platforms are huge. YouTube is huge. Twitch is huge, but it's still a small world. I just want to bring to mind that, you know, I've always had 6 degrees or less separation between myself and Lindsay. I see you're a fan of History Buff, or History Buffs, Nick Hodges' channel.
Yeah.
You know, my
a
good friend.
He too needs to upload more.
Yes.
He's like worse than I am with his like once every 6 months, like bring back History Buffs.
Maybe he's writing a book. Who knows? You know, I don't
Yeah, you know what? Sure. I can't wait for his alternate history. I'm sure his alternate history will be like, you know, in the 1560s.
Yeah.
But
no,
if he wrote a book, I'd read the shit out of it.
Yeah. No, he's a great guy. Real good friend of mine. I used to come to town and stay at my house sometimes, and you know, I used to go visit him, and yeah, man, over in London. That's a great guy. And Andre Meadows, you know, Andre Meadows, black nerd, man.
Black nerd comedy.
Yeah, saw him not too long ago when I went to LA. So it was
back before the plague year.
Yep, pre-plague. That's how we're gonna start referring to things. Pre-plague. My wife even said, "Are you just a little disappointed that you weren't able to put like a pandemic in your book after you saw Corona come up?"
Me?
Yeah. Like,
oh no.
Because you talk about.
Like, I will never do that, because I think there is definitely like, you know, A, plenty of people are going to be doing that, but B, you know, I think we need to. There needs to be room to fictionally live outside of the thing we are living right now. So it's like, you know, this series will have like different world crises,
Gotcha.
but not this, not like
this one.
not doing.
A little too close to home right now.
No, I'm like, I live it. I don't need to read it in my aliens blowing up things fiction.
Yeah, man. You gotta tell you, it was only with how close things are. It was only a matter of time before I got my way around to you, Lindsay, and it's been great. So thank you, Christian. You have any last words here before we go, sir?
Nothing other than to say that I've really liked what I've read, and it's been a real pleasure and honor to do this. And I'm gonna be praising the book from the mountaintops. So thanks again.
Yeah.
I hope you like the way it ends. And thank you guys for having me. It was a lot of fun, and your questions are really interesting. And I can't see the chat, but I'm sure you guys were great too. And thank you guys for watching.
Yeah. Thank you. We're gonna let this girl go. Hopefully, when you come back to Austin, you can come hang out. Come on to the show.
Yes.
It'd be great to meet you in person. Like I've met some of these other people. You've been incredible to talk to. Congratulations on everything. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. Yes, we will hang and we will collab, as the kids do say.
As the kids say out there.
As the youth say. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna let you go.
Is over.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, and we'll talk to you later.